This is Keen On, the daily now.tv chat show with some of the world's leading thinkers and writers. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Keen On. It's always nice to see old friends back on the show. Eche Temelkuran is one of the more distinguished people to have appeared on the show. She's actually been on a couple of times. She was back on in April 2020, talking about, firstly, how to institutionalize solidarity during one kind of crisis or another, of COVID, of political crisis. She's also been on the show talking about how to lose a country. She's an authority on the disintegration of democracy, both in Turkey and around the world. She's also one of the most active people on social media. She's been on it almost from the beginning. Some people have voted her one of the most 10 influential people on social media. And I thought it'd be great to have her back on the show to talk not about social media today, although we may talk a little bit about that, but her original experience with social media and how it played in and out of her politics and her political activism. Eche is joining us from Germany today. Eche, welcome. Thank you so much.
Hi, Andrew. It's great to be back on the show.
So I know you're not necessarily a spokesman, certainly not an official spokesman for social media one way or the other, but do you remember the first time you were on social media? What platform was it? Was it Twitter or Facebook or one of the really early ones?
Yeah, it was Twitter. I didn't do much Facebook for some reason, but Twitter. I remember the first night I used it. There was a class action. A legal case was going on, and the young people, students, university students, were trying to get their voice heard. So I just opened an account and started this Twitter interaction with people. And it was a, good beginning, so to speak, because that night they were all released. They were about to be prosecuted. They weren't. So that was a happy beginning to Twitter, which now is called X in a very obscure way.
Do you remember what year that was?
It was 2012 or 11. Yeah, I think it was 2012.
Was it then that you began to understand the political potential of Turkey? That was a Freudian area, not a Twitter.
Potential of Turkey, yeah. Well, ironically, actually, it was the potential of Turkey getting people in the prison. So everybody needed social media from day one. I think, countries like Turkey, that, mainstream media is under attack or under oppression, social media has been much more popular. So when we were all on Twitter, for instance, I remember my European friends were not even aware of Twitter. So I remember that right before it became a political tool, actually, it was just friends talking among each other, a lot of insider jokes, a lot of very close jargon and so on. So, it was not necessarily a political vehicle, but then it became very, very quickly like that, especially after Arab Spring, I would say.
You say we all. Who is the we here?
We, as in like people who couldn't find somehow their voice in mainstream media, or people like me who have been kicked out of mainstream media. And
you had been a very prominent columnist in a Turkish newspaper.
Yeah, I was not bad. I was the most read woman columnist, political columnist in Turkey for a while. But then this didn't, of course, stop them from kicking me out. Anyway, but many people, many women, many men, many journalist colleagues, they have been kicked out because they were actually quite popular. And what they did immediately was moving on to social media. First, they did blogs, websites, but they were all active on social media. It was as if you're not on Twitter, you do not exist anymore. And it was also the way to say that I am not dead. Like, you cannot stop me from talking. You cannot silence us. So it was kind of, there was a little bit revengeful, or not, I wouldn't say revengeful, but it was a little bit of the stamina that comes from being in opposition was there. So there was a lot of energy in the beginning in 2012. And then 2013, of course, Gezi uprising happened. First the Arab Spring, and then Gezi uprising. So that was when Twitter became massive in Turkey.
So you were involved with the protests in
Mm-hmm.
Gezi. Tell me a little bit about that, and how you see the contribution, both perhaps positive and negative, in social media in the uprising.
The first days of Gezi was very, very
That,
small.
that May 2013.
I was just back from Tunis then, and I was in Tunis with the people who brought down the Ben Ali regime. So I was already aware how social media was being used in our world during the uprising. So when I came back, it was so clear to me that same thing was happening in Turkey. The beginning of the uprising was very, very small. It was just another, environmentalist, let's say, insignificant rather, protest. But it was very clear to me and to a few other people that it was going to grow bigger and bigger, which it eventually did. So in few days, it became a uprising that spanned the entire country. And this happened thanks to social media. Because at the time, the joke was penguin media. We were calling the mainstream media penguin media, because the mainstream media, CNN, Turkish CNN especially, were showing penguin documentaries constantly, while the entire country was, uprising. So that's why we call them penguin media. And since you couldn't get anything from that media, you were on Twitter and trying to understand what's happening. And also, it wasn't only getting the news, but also it was the tool to mobilize people, to call for other activists, to call for other people to come on the street and help the protesters. And then social media was I know, and I've seen people, I've heard people, like thousands of them, saying that those were the best days of their lives, even though they were not in Turkey, and even though we lost people, and many people were injured, blinded, etc. Even though that was the case, I know many, many, many people who cried looking at their Twitter feed, cried with joy, seeing that the dignity in the country was uprising, was standing up. So Twitter became very close to our hearts. I don't know if Elon Musk has any idea about this, or whether he would like to hear about this. But for many people in my part of the world, Twitter is a home, has become a home.
Yeah, I was thinking of the issue, Ece, of home, because I know your last book was on Together, and you're very interested in the idea of home. Was social media, in a sense, a real place then in those 2012, 2013 years?
Yeah, it was. I mean, now in hindsight, I can say this. It was our digital home. It was like everybody coming in the morning and asking each other, "So what's up? What are we doing today?" Kind of. So, and there, friendships were born. People trusted each other. I think the most important thing about social media, especially Twitter at the time, and I'm saying this both for Gezi Uprising and Tahrir and El Kasbah in Tunis, people decided to believe in other people, other individuals that they have never seen in their lives. All those logos, New York Times, CNN, BBC, and these logos are millions of dollars worth logos, didn't mean much for a while. And at the time when, it was at the heat of the events, people found each other through Twitter, and they had very interesting, complicated, very humane ways of confirming each other's personality, who he is, she is, and also if I can trust her, and so on. Because it was important, and when the protests were happening, it was a life and death matter sometimes. Which I am on the street, which street shall I turn to? Where is the police? Because the police was attacking, and your only tool was Twitter, and somebody telling you giving you correct information where there is no police, or where there is police and where police is attacking. So I don't know if I should say this, but nowadays when I see that Elon Musk is changing Twitter's logo, and there's this cage fight thing with Zuckerberg is happening, guys, we take these things seriously. I wanted to tell them, these things are serious. You are running a massive organization that can make revolutions, that can make people friends with each other, that can create solidarity, comradeship, that can literally change the world for better. Come on, take it seriously. This is what I want to tell since few days to both of them, actually, because I remember, since you told me that we are going to having this discussion, I was thinking, yeah, it was serious. It was a home. It was a political home for many people, and it is still so, up to a certain degree. And what they are doing with social media at the moment is making many people politically homeless, I think.
Did it ever occur to you that, I mean, Musk obviously wasn't involved with Twitter in 2012, 2013, yeah, but it was still a privately owned company in San Francisco, a tech company run by people you didn't know, whose politics you probably wouldn't be particularly keen on. Did it ever occur to you that this was bound to end badly?
Oh yeah, I mean, I even wrote about it in How to Lose a Country. We are treating these places, these digital spaces, as if they are, our common property,
public space,
public property, but they are private companies, and we are doing politics in the back garden of some company, actually. Someone's private garden. I felt like that all the time. And we treated these places like agora, the 21st century agoras, but they are not agoras. There is always someone who is dictating actually what can be said, what cannot be said, and there's always a plug that someone unplug suddenly. I was aware of this, of course, and I was trying to make people aware of it as well. But what strikes me now, and since then, actually, since from the very beginning of social media, how come all these people who are actually creating the content, who are creating the space, who are filling the space, who are making the space a concrete thing, how come all these people cannot claim their authority and rights to be in this place and to own the place? Actually, it always strikes me like we're talking about millions and millions of people, and they don't come together to say to, let's say, Elon Musk or Zuckerberg that, excuse me, we own this place, not you. That would be interesting, I think. And I'm sure there are many people who are working towards this internet, this kind of understanding of internet, this kind of understanding of web or social media.
Yeah, that's what some people here are calling Web3. Some of these new platforms like Blue Sky,
Yeah.
Mastodon. Have you tried any of them?
Yeah. Macedon, I am trying now, actually, in a very, you know.
Do you think it confronts any of the issues you're talking about, or is it just more
No,
of
of
the
course
same?
not. Of course not. Of course not. Because I think, you know, the seriousness, the gravity of the issue. I don't know how many people understand this, but like, every time in history, when the communication, the structure of communication changed, the political systems changed. So we are actually new kind of fascism all around the world, not only because of crisis of capitalism, crisis of democracy, but also we are partly it is because of the crisis of communication. We couldn't regulate our new communication. We do not have the rules yet, and we're still, operating with the jungle laws, so to speak. And that is why our politics cannot be healthy, let's say, unless we take care of the regulation of this issue. And by regulating, I don't mean, of course, oppression or like, strict rules or anything, but there has to be regulation. There has to be a sort of, basic moral requirements and political basics of the basic rules of the space. Otherwise, as we are now, uh, we will going to live in this arena, which we like to think as agora.
You mentioned Agora a couple of times in previous conversations, both on and offline. You told me that story about Greece, the Agora, and the smell of onions. Maybe you could tell that story in the context of social media.
Yeah. When Gezi finished, when Tahrir was over, or let's say, yeah, let me tell this through that. And when we were defeated, we were suppressed. All that energy, all that joyful energy, just suddenly, almost suddenly, soured. It became something sour, and it became self-flagellating, self-castigating, self-destructive, sarcastic, cynical, and it shaped the current social media. And what I thought then was, and I still think that, when there is no political activity on the street with physical bodies, social media is nothing. And it is not only nothing, but it also creates the sense of being in a castle under siege. So, as in any castle under siege, the famine starts, the plague starts, and all these things in political terms begins when the action in the street, when social media activity, political activity is not coupled with the action on the street, political action on the street. So agora, in that sense, this is my Greek editor who told me the story. I was eating salad, Greek salad with onions, and I was going to give an interview, and I said, "Oh, I'm eating onions. I shouldn't." And he said, "Baby, you're going." He was a funny guy. Darling, you are going to talk about democracy. Democracy smells onions. Look at that agora. Agora was, in front of us, and he said, there, people, when they went there to build the democracy for the first time, thousands of years ago, um, they were carrying with them a loaf of bread and an onion, not to starve up in the hill. So yeah, democracy, communication, political activity, action. These are all real people, and it doesn't smell. I don't know. Uh, these room deodorants. It smells onion.
How do you smell the onions on social media?
You don't actually. You don't. It's just I cannot keep on with this analogy, but I can say that um, when there is no political action, I think all that energy turns into something um, insidious, and that cynicism and that sarcasm is directed inwards to the
Mm.
people who are part of the political action, and we become merciless uh, towards each other. And like any defeated political movement, Turkish people who were during Gezi uprising, or Kurdish people, many of them has gone through this. They blamed each other for the defeat, and they did this on social media. And when you see that, of course, you lose your faith in politics, in comradeship, in solidarity, in political connection,
So
because
the souring of social media is a consequence of the
political defeat.
political defeat. So some people blame social media
No,
for
no, I
that.
don't think so. Social media makes it, of course, easier to trash each other because you're not face to face, and also you're aware that you're on a stage and you have to look cooler than the other. You have to look like you're not the reason of the defeat, but the others. So there is this illusional moral superiority among those people who blame the others for political defeat, and we're not always questioning their moral superiority and who they are really. What did they do to earn that moral superiority? So yeah, it's an interesting. There's an interesting psychological war when political defeat is certain. After that, the psychological war, okay, serves nobody at all, and instead, actually, it really damages your faith in political action itself, in communication itself, but it also breaks you as a person. It silences you as well. I think.
Social psychologists in the US, Eche, have noted that in 2012 there was a dramatic increase in the numbers of people anxious, in the rise of mental illness of one kind or another. Do you think that, I mean, not everyone, of course, especially young people, were involved in the Arab Spring, but do you think there is a connection between the failure of social media to affect political change and our new, what some people call our age of anxiety, age of mental illness?
Well, I cannot, I'm not very knowledgeable about this issue, but I can tell that uh, technology, without a worldview, without a political stance, without a political understanding of the world, that's what I actually want to say. Without the political understanding of the reality and without a political goal, uh, of course, media, social media, especially social media, can become a void, an abyss that people can fall into. And I think it's not social media per se what's getting people crazy, but it is the lack of meaning in it. When there is meaning, such as when in Tahrir there was meaning, during Gezi there was meaning, or Black Lives Matter, for instance, there was meaning to communicate. When there is such a meaning in our communication, be it social media or or conventional media, then you know that you have other people to depend on. You don't have to go crazy, or if you want to go crazy, you can go crazy with thousands of other people together. So yeah, I think it's not social media, it's the lack of moral and political compass that is making people a little bit mad.
You mentioned Black Lives Matter. Do you see that in some ways, both in the role of social media and in politics, as being the equivalent of Gezi or some of the other Arab Spring events?
Yes, I think so. I mean, like, these things, I mean, like, of course, I keep saying that when we were defeated, when we were suppressed, and so on. But funny thing about these, not funny, it's actually quite serious. The most important part of these movements, actions, collective actions, is that they didn't maybe they didn't acquire a very clear triumph, political triumph, but they changed the fabric of our communication. After Black Lives Matter, now it's not normal to do things which were normal before. Like, this tiny bit of racism is now became, like, let's say, invisible racism became more and more visible. Now nobody can say that we don't see it. It's only thanks to Black Lives Matter this happened. Or in terms of Gezi, for instance, we might feel like we were defeated, but it was only 2 days ago, 3 days ago, Erdogan was still Turkish president, or should I say dictator. Erdogan was saying, it was mentioning Gezi, and the fear in his voice was still there. And I know that Tahrir left a similar mark in that country's, in Egypt's history as well, as well as in the rest of the Arab world. So these, political actions, collective actions, they change the way we think, and they set a new reference system that terrifies the dictators, and most of the time makes us more courageous than before. So yeah, they change something, but that is a more subtle change, yet more lasting change, I think.
As I said, you have a very large following on Twitter. You have over 2.7 million followers. As a writer, intellectual, journalist, novelist, you've done everything. How has that changed your own sense of who you are and your relationship with your, not followers, but readers? Are followers readers? As a writer, does that affect how you work?
No, I mean, like, before Gezi, I lost my job 2012. And, that
You lost your job at a newspaper, right?
Yeah. And that was the time when I started becoming, more active on Twitter. And what I understood is, at least then, the haters were following more closely than the readers. And readers were not even, present in Twitter at the time. They became more present, of course, when media deteriorated. But haters, that's 2.7 million. Some of them are haters. Some of them are bots. Some of them not bots, but, like, what do you call them? Like trolls.
Yeah.
Government trolls. So yeah, it's not that everybody likes me. 2.7 million. No, but lately, after I started writing in English, How to Lose a Country, that is like 2017, and now I'm tweeting in English more. It is of course somehow magical to know that, oh, in the morning somebody from India will write about Together, my last book, and then in the afternoon somebody from Chile will write about the same book. Of course it is magical. I'm like, this was not possible, uh, I don't know, 10 years ago.
What do you think of the term influencer? There's a lot of people write about the influencer economy, and a lot of young people, especially in the United States, seem to be arguing, telling their parents that their career will be as an influencer. Does that make any sense?
Well, good
On
luck to
social media.
them, because that is a very insecure position. First of all, you are working for this company, actually, let's say Instagram or Twitter. You're not really getting paid by someone. You are making yourself into a product. And I'm not talking about the mental health issues that this can cause. But that thing that you are big on, like Twitter or Instagram, can just vanish like this. I mean, like, what if tomorrow Elon Musk says, okay, I'm unplugging this, it's over? What are we going to do? And that powerlessness we have has become their job. For these influencers, their income, their livelihood depends on this very ambivalent situation. So it must be a torture. It must be a mental torture.
Yeah, Marx wrote about the proletariat. A lot of people now write about the precariat. It seems as though the social media economy is the heart of this precarious new relationship between labor and capital.
The tragic thing is, they're not, well, this is the biggest political issue since the beginning of the last century, but they're not aware of their precarious situation. They do not know that they're precariat, actually, and that is pitiful, because as long they might think that influencers, as long as I put this makeup on, as long as I have Louis Vuitton as a shirt, whatever, as long as I wear a Louis Vuitton shoe, I don't look like a precariat, do I? But they are actually, and their life is holding by a thread, and that is so pitiful.
Yeah, if Marx was around now, he might write, "You have nothing to lose but your Louis Vuitton shirt."
Yes. That is a lot of money, by the way. It's not like chains.
Yeah, golden chains. Well, finally, HS, real honor and pleasure as always. You mentioned Elon Musk a couple of times. You retweeted something that Musk wrote about Bernie Sanders.
Oh yeah.
Is there any hope left? I mean, Musk seems to be changing the name of Twitter to X. Do you hold any hope in Twitter, where you're still active, or X, whatever you want to call it?
I am not a big fan of psychologizing the political question. Obviously, Elon Musk stands on the opposite corner from me when it comes to class issues, when it comes to politics. But sometimes I cannot not think that, wow, this guy is so lonely. How lonely can you be with all this money, by the way?
Yeah.
And, just say things on Twitter at, like, I don't know, 3 o'clock in the morning. That is a very, very miserable life, probably. And I'm not saying this sarcastically or cynically. I'm saying this like, as a human being, this is misery. This must be miserable. The new thing in the world, or it's not that new, but I am kind of getting to know this world a little bit more. Andrew, there are now very rich men in this system, and they're looking for meaning because they know that this is meaningless what they're doing. And in order to generate meaning, they are calling intellectuals and they are trying to form a circle of intellectuals around them, philosophers, journalists, artists, and so on. And I call this Alexander the Great syndrome of the rich men of 21st century. And now they, as being the new Alexanders, they are creating these circles of Aristoteles. They're Aristoteles, they're Socrates, and so on. And they are living in this illusion of that they can change the world and their business will become more meaningful and more moral through the existence of this circle that they pay for. But for Elon Musk, although I find this pretty ridiculous, for Elon Musk and for his likes, I think they need a circle of people, intelligent people, who are not afraid to tell them that they are childish and ridiculous. This is what I feel. I mean, like, come on, who are you to say this to Bernie Sanders? Yeah. Oh my God, did I write that? I forgot that I wrote this. Yes, good for me.
You wrote, just to be clear for people who are listening,
I know, I just.
this was in a response to something that Musk said about Sanders. I keep forgetting that the idiot below being Musk, is still passing as human just because he has unnecessary amount of money.
Oh my God, the guy still lets me live on Twitter and have a blue tick even.